on this webinar now. It's really great to have you all join us. Thank you. So just some introductions. My name is Brian and I work for the Chartered Institute of Ecology and Environmental Management as the Education and Careers Lead. And my colleague Lee is joining us. Lee?
Hello there, everyone. My name is Lee Nightingale. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the EDI Engagement Officer for CIEEM. For those of you on the call who don't know about CIEEM and may have only just come across us because of Instagram, we are the leading professional body for ecologists and environmental managers, and we've been working to protect and enhance nature for the benefit of society since 1991. So quite a long time now. We have members from across the public, private, charity, industry and academic sectors, and it's our mission to raise standards and the profile of professional ecological and environmental management for the benefit of nature and society. And we recognise that in order to achieve that vision, our mission really needs a diversity of minds, ideas, talents, and people that can come together to deliver that change. And that's why we hold sessions like today and why we are so thrilled to have Sonya with us today. So with that, unless Brian, you have anything else to say, we can hand over to Sonya.
I was just going to add, actually, so the reason that
Oh,
we've
yes, of
invited
course.
Sonya, that's okay. The reason that we've invited Sonya here today is a couple of years ago, probably pre-COVID, actually. Now, I was sat at an award ceremony in London listening to Sonya as the guest speaker. Now, I guess we've all been to to hear guest speakers, and sometimes what they say resonates for a few minutes, some for a few hours and some for a few weeks. But the advice that Sonya gave that evening around networking has sat with me literally since that point. It was put into practice by everybody in that conference hall that I could see straight away, and has sat with me ever since. So I think that Sonya's really amazing at giving practical tips that can easily stick in your mind for these concepts as well. So I'm really happy she's able to join us today. So without further ado, I will hand over to Sonya.
That's so lovely to hear, actually. Once again, I think a lot of the times, and we'll get onto the real session, but for those who are joining, a lot of the times you might be doing things and you're constantly wondering, is someone understanding your value? Is it making sense? Is somebody actually taking in the information? Are you ready for that next step? And one thing that I've realized across the years is someone is always watching and listening, and most of the time we're lurking, right? We're now the lurking screenshot generation. It's not necessarily likes and subscribes, but it's what message and value are you adding? So at the start of this, I really just want to kind of emphasize the fact that this is a long-term kind of gain. It's a long-term game. It's not overnight success. It's what can we do now and how can we implement that to make sure that we are creating sustainable change moving forward. So it's small steps that are going to create significant moments. And interestingly, there are times of doubt and there are times of disbelief. And when you have those times, lean into your network and ask questions like, what's the one thing one quality that you admire about me? When you need advice, what do you come to me for? Or equally, what's something I've done the last 12 months that's impressed you outside of work or within our kind of, wider friendship system? And the reason I say that to you is because, like Brian said, so I'm just going to shift my chair. Like Brian said, I like to give real practical advice because otherwise, we're consumed by a lot of information, a lot of noise, a lot of content, but a lot of that just seems really blurry. So in this session, I would love to give you as practical advice as possible. Which also means that, please, I invite questions. I invite disagreements. I invite debates. I want you to get involved in the chat and tell me if you see something better, if there's an area to improve, if you don't agree because you have a different perspective. That's how we all learn. I personally have ADHD and chronic migraines. That is a blessing in disguise. But at the same time, what it often means is sometimes I can get really passionate and I can digress and all my brain ideas can come to light. So if that is happening, feel free to pull me back, Leah, Brian, team, audience members who are attending, and just be like, let's just get back on track, and it's completely fine. But I like to have those kind of rules of engagement. So the first starting point, which you should be able to see my slides, is I'd love to know who's here with us. So, there's about 30 of us, so thank you so much. Obviously, there'll be more people joining. Who are you? What brings you here on a Wednesday evening? What are you hoping to get out of it? Just let me know anything that you can in the chat. And remember, this is an online networking and knowledge building session. And so with that in mind, we want to know who you are and why you're here. Well, lovely to meet you 1 year into my career. Love that for you. What are your questions? What are you hoping to get out of it? What does good look like? The way that I like to work is, look, I've got a slide deck, right? But nobody wants to be spoken at. So if this is more interesting with a Q&A, well, let's go that way. If you need the slides as prompts, let's go that way. It's really meant to be agile and flexible to suit your needs, because ultimately you're the one who's here. And so you should be able to see my slides. I'd love to know, first question, does anyone recognize anyone, apart from myself actually, on this slide? And if you do, you can put it in the chat. And if you don't, that's cool. I'll have to meet more people that you will recognize in your industry, which is a good challenge for me. Sol Campbell, yes. I do recognize them, but I'm terrible with names. Good enough. Good for me. This is a group of people who I have had the pleasure of interviewing and being in the same room with, and some of them actually connected on the likes of Instagram, all through business networking. And I think that blows my mind to look at very much this screen to be like, oh, I got to interview Sol Campbell and Gilberto Silva, who we see on the screen. I got to interview the Princess of Saudi Arabia twice. I went and interviewed Peter Tuchman, who is the Einstein of Wall Street, as well as Lauren Gray, who apparently has about 50 million followers. And I promise you that I had no idea who she was when I interviewed her. And that comes across in the interview, because my siblings looked at her who were younger than me. They were like, you have no idea how famous she is. I was like, I had no clue. I was just at a conference. I grabbed her. I interviewed her, found out she's a real somebody, right? Maybe not in my industry, but definitely on TikTok. And so business networking for me is very much about how can you create those relationships, as to Anchal's point. How can you build something where both parties can feel that they have benefited from in the future? It is no longer those old school networking, which is all about transaction. It's not a transaction. I'm not buying something from you. You're not selling. It is a value exchange. I can help you with your personal brand. I can help you with networking. I can help you embracing your neurodivergence in the workplace. You can help me understand what the trends are in the future, because you're first year into your career and you know far more than I do. You can help me understand how to use tech better in our day-to-day life. You can help me understand what the future of work might look like. So the first thing I really want us to focus on is that this is a value exchange. But at all points, we do have value, even if we're 1 year into our career, or we're studying towards a degree, or we're right at the beginning of something, or we're right at the end of something. We all have something to share. And that's really important when it comes to any kind of networking, any kind of relationship building, any kind of exchange, let's say. So who am I and why am I here? So my name is Sonya Barlow. The keynote that Brian mentioned, I think, was maybe one of my first. And there's a lot that I've learned since then. The first thing I've learned, which I'm going to tell you all now, because as a neurodivergent brain, it didn't really hit me, but this is really important. Your accessibility on your slides really do matter. So my book, which I published with a publisher, is yellow on red. I thought I used to be so cool, and I used to have slides that were red background with the yellow text. Turns out most people cannot read them. And if you do read them, they will give you a headache. So one thing that I realized through networking and through knowledge building and through being in this space is you get to learn what other people not only like, but what good looks like. And you get to implement that behavior. So in 2015 to 2020, I worked in the world of tech. And in 2018, I found myself really lonely in the workspace. So I started a brunch club. The brunch club was called the LMF Network. We literally just used to meet for brunch. For the first 3 brunches, no one came through. epic failure. But what that teaches you is not to stop, but it teaches you to go back and take feedback. The first brunch, okay, location didn't work, we changed it. The second, people didn't really know what they were getting, we changed the description. The third, I invited all my friends and asked them to invite other friends. So I really just connected with the people I knew. Post 2019, when I lost my job, I decided to move it into a business. So we are a inclusion consultancy, and we reinvest our profits into a careers program. So in 5 years, we've upskilled over 100,000 people with a 90% success rate. We have the largest mentorship program in the UK and serve 24 countries. And ultimately, you can't empower your people if you don't have the relevant policies to attract, hire, and retain them. In 2020, I started putting my hand up for a lot of things online during the pandemic. Turns out, put your hand up and someone likes your pitch, you then have to do the work. So I got a book deal, and Unprepared to Entrepreneur came out. And then in 2021, the BBC approached me to host a radio show. And I actually said no, because ironically, I was applying to be a PhD student. At 12 p.m., the PhD rejected me. On 3 p.m., the BBC gave me an offer. So I hosted the BBC show for 2.5 years, and it became an award-winning show. Last year, I moved into YouTube because I wanted to own my brand asset. And this year, as of next month, I will now be an editor for a new luxury travel and tech magazine called Travel and Tech. That is the name. What I have, you may consider a squiggly career, but what I'm really trying to say is take a step back. It's about acknowledging your skills. I work on creating more inclusive environments and making sure that there's representation. I work on elevating my voice and other people's voices through a medium of their choice. It's not because I'm on YouTube and TikTok and webinars and a newsletter. It's because you show up in a place that suits you. Let me come there with you. Let me not ask you to come where I am, because that's unfair. I also think about creating those more sustainable environments, and everything I've learned across the way, I love to teach. And that's what I like to do through forums like this. But at the same time, you recognize I failed and I figured it out. And I was in a position where I put my hand up and said, I don't know what I'm doing. And that's completely fine, because then you leaned into your network. That might look like being in a position where you are saying yes to something small and something new every month. Last year, I tried to learn more life skills. So I learned how to cook. Once you learn how to cook in the kitchen, you can take that level of confidence back into your workplace. Because let's think about it. When you go to the kitchen, you make a recipe. Even if it doesn't work out the first time, it's not like you're going to stop. You're not going to feed yourself. You're just going to do something different next time. That's the same with your career. That's the same with your confidence. The same with anything you're practicing. You could start as a terrible cook, and most of us are, but it takes practice and recipes and asking people for feedback for you to really carry on. And what does success looks like? Someone not getting food poisoning. Honestly, basic measure of success. And that's really how it starts. Because 80% of your opportunities come through your network, Brian is a great example of that. We may have not connected over the last 5 years, but something has been said and done, and that consistency has been there in terms of receipts and promotion. Now, if you don't want a LinkedIn presence, and most of us don't, if you don't want to be online shouting about it, what are you doing for your workplace? If, Kerry, you are studying towards a degree in environmental science and working for the Wildlife Trust, which is amazing, is there a way that you could maybe share your learnings every month through like a newsletter or a Substack? Is there a way that you can educate those around you to tell us what we can do better for the environment? Anshel, if you are a Wildlife Trust trainee, I don't quite know what that means, but I'd love to know more. Is there a way that you can go back to schools or universities to talk to them what skills they can use to get there? And then can you showcase that to your employer every 3 months to say, look, this is what I've been doing thus far, and this is what's going to help me to get to that next stage. Remember, at all times, I do invite questions, so please let me know should you have any. Otherwise, it feels like I'm just talking to a void, and I talk for a living, so I can talk for days, but I just want to make sure it's adding value. Interestingly, business networking, the 3-2-1 rule, rejections around networking is something that I take pride in. So I've started doing a lot of social content and YouTube content. So this is a 10-minute YouTube video, should you be interested in, that just reminds you of everything we're discussing, but in more practical tips. And let me tell you a fun financial fact. Business networking, according to CNBC, can increase your take-home salary by $28,000, which is equivalent to like 25K at this point, right? Pounds. We, through our mentorship program, help the average person increase an 11K pay rise. Why? Because you are open to information, you are exchanging value, you are growing in your career, and you are focusing on your future self. This is not just about financial gain, but that is definitely someone's driver. If your driver is fulfillment, impact, sustainability, social entrepreneurship, whatever it might be, or intrapreneurship, think about what good looks like to you and work backwards. And so on that note, a little bit more practicality. Over the 12 months, and you can do this exercise on a notepad or on paper or in the webinar chat, think about over the next 12 months, what do you want to achieve, right? One goal. Is it that you want to increase your compensation of any kind? Is it that you want to increase your community or your friends or your network? Is it that you want to learn more, or is it that you want to share that knowledge? Be that through public speaking or writing or having any kind of medium which you are communicating a subject matter. You can only have one of four, and traditionally that sharing will come at the end, right? So compensation, community, knowledge, or increasing your network from I am the thought leader expert perspective. So I'll give you a second. You write that down, what that next 12 months looks like. Fab. So once you've written that down, we're going to work backwards. So your vision is your big vision. So let's say for me, in 12 months, I want to get a book deal, right? That's kind of my 12 months. Let's work backwards. Every quarter is a new focus. So Q4, I will be signing my contract. Q3, I will be in a position where I am negotiating with different stakeholders. Q2 will be when I apply. Q1 is when I'm doing my research. So you can use that same focus in anything: job promotion, network, community. Your ultimate success is Q4. So your big vision is whatever that big goal is. Your mission is exactly what I've said. Your mission are those milestones that you're going to hit every quarter. When you have a neurodivergent brain like I do, or when you are overwhelmed with the amount of information that you are gaining, or when we are remote working and we are lacking that community and feeling more lonely, the honest truth is that we get overwhelmed and we start to focus on what we haven't achieved versus what we have. And this is about shifting your mindset, having that growth mindset, and celebrating the fact that you've achieved a milestone, even if you haven't hit that final vision. Now, let's go back to focus, and then Kerry, I'll come to your question. If at 12 months you want to achieve that vision and you've got your milestones now in place, what are your principles? So your principles in simple terms are your 5 yeses or your 5 hashtags or the 5 boundaries you're going to set. That means that anything that does not sit within that 5, you say not right now and you pass on to a friend. And this is what's really important. I tell you why. Because should you meet somebody in the next month or so, if someone goes, so what are you trying to achieve in the next 12 months? You can be really clear on what you're trying to achieve and you can ask them too. Once you've connected, let's say Brian, right, as an example, wants to learn how to swim in the next 12 months. I know that's what he wants and he knows I want to write a book. Let's say I meet somebody who is giving free swimming lessons. That might not be something of my value at that point, but it might be of Brian's. I can then connect Brian to be like, hey, just CCing you into an email. You said something about swimming. Here's an instructor. You take it away. 80% of your opportunities come through your network. I'm going to be really honest with you. That number is probably even higher once you start putting that work in. Kerry, to your point, let's answer that question. What advice you have to help confidence be heard in business? I have knowledge I want to share, but I'm not in a senior position. That's even better. If you're not in a senior position, you've got knowledge to share, think about what mediums you can use to share that knowledge. So a really good example being when I worked my first tech job, and this was in 2015, 2016, I equally was at the first stage of my career. And I realized I had so much to share, but I didn't quite know how to share it. So what I would do, and I want everyone to actually start doing this if you want, and Kerry, please do this, is I would every Friday just go on the news and summarize 5 articles and changes that are happening in my industry that were relevant and put like a little bit of analysis on it. Tiny, tiny subject matter shift, right? I would send that to my team, just my team. Eventually, it got turned into a newsletter. Eventually, more than my team, it was my department. Eventually, the CEO was on that spread. Because how can you share knowledge and make it efficient for other people? Impact is about adding value. Do it in your own way. The second point to that is, let's say you are comfortable being online. Every week, you can make a TikTok, pictures or a video. I actually did this today, funnily enough, where I was like, here's the 3 things that I've read this week that might be of interest to you. And you literally hashtag wildlife, hashtag climate, hashtag CIEEM, and you post it. What you're not defining yourself in is how many people are engaged with it to start with. What you are saying success looks like is you have the confidence enough to share something that you are learning. We're not focusing on how many people are actually absorbing it. First step is let's get to the starting point and let's cross it. Let's get confident in actually being comfortable enough in sharing our opinion and our analysis in a way that suits us, at least for like 3 weeks, 6 weeks, and then you take it back in terms of what's its impact for? Leah, did it make sense to you? Brian, did it make sense? Anchal, we met on webinar. Am I adding value? If not, what do you think I can change and move forward? And that's completely fine. And this is applicable to all of the questions now, and then we're going to get into the actual Q&A part. Think about your story. Think about who you are right now and who you want to be. So again, I'm just going to give you 12 months. The reason I say 12 months is if the pandemic has taught us anything, is that your life can change overnight. So this like 3-year, 5-year, 10-year plan, scrap that. It's not a thing. Doesn't matter anymore. 12 months. So your story. On the left, again, Venn diagrams, really handy. Where it says Sonya, this is going to be you. I want you to write everything you are or you want to be, right? Whatever that looks like. So I am not a content creator. I'd like to be one. It's a very different game. That's there. I'm manifesting it, but with real intent. The world is everything you can speak on or that you are interested in learning about. And the middle are your 5 hashtags, meaning that anything you say, you show up with, you talk about, you lean into, you're affiliated with, has to sit one of those 5 umbrella hashtags. Now, let me give you an example. If you came to me and you said, Sonya, what are your thoughts on the current chart, the current music chart? My response would be, that's a really good question. I actually don't have any information on that because it's not a subject matter that I am interested in or that I know about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a backseat and listen to this conversation. And that's completely fine. What I've learned as somebody with ADHD and somebody who's a talker and somebody who has the gift of the gab is that all of that can be detrimental if you don't know what you're talking about. So active listening and knowing where to take a step back is just as important. But also slightly niching down and narrowing yourself is that. So as Brian mentioned, business networking, neurodiversity, these are topics I talk about online because they're in relation to who I am and what I can talk about. But should the webinar be on how to be a great wildlife trust trainee, I wouldn't even know where to start. And there are some people who'd say, I can do that. I can learn and I can present. I'm not one of those people. And the thing is that it takes years to build that trust and credibility, but it takes a second to break it. And so you want to be really clear on what kind of spaces in the world you want to be a part of, how you want to be seen and how you are showing up. Because if you end up taking someone's space that isn't yours, it can be detrimental to you. A great example being, I got invited, so I'm of Pakistani heritage. I got invited 2 months ago to sit on this panel that was in the film industry, talking about representation in media, but the community's name and the target audience was Black audience members, right? Like Black Afro-Caribbean community members. And so my response back was, I'm so glad to be invited, but I just want you all to confirm that I'm of Pakistani heritage. If that's not an issue, I'd be happy to speak on my understanding of film, media, and representation on YouTube. But in case you've made a mistake, I don't want to take up anyone's space, so I'm going to tap out of this opportunity, but let's stay in touch for the future. And that's only because I'm really mindful of the spaces that we have and the spaces that you want to take, but also who I am in terms of my story, right? And so I'm just going to post it in the chat. But if you want to know more, we have a business networking newsletter. We have the book. We have YouTube. I've just posted all the links. So it's there. So we're going to go to Brian's question in just a second. And then Kerry, come back to your question. Should you have any other questions, please let me know in the chat. 3-2-1 rule of networking. So this is something I created a few years ago. And it does work because it's easy. In any given situation, you need to talk to 3 people. That is your number. If you've spoken to 3, you can go home. I actually do go home now because I'm like, oh, I've done my 3, perfect. Of those 3 people, you connect with 2, and of that 2 people, you have a virtual coffee or an in-person connection with one of them. Now, this is where that point about your story and your vision comes into play, because you can ask them questions like, what's your vision for the next 12 months? What is something that's happening in the world that really interests you? What are some milestones that you're trying to achieve this year, right? So you get to know them and you start exchanging value. But at the same time, someone asked a question about confidence and putting it out there when it comes to networking. The point being is you don't have to speak to everyone, and that can be really uncomfortable and really overwhelming. And actually, especially if you're introverted or you're new, it's just difficult, right? We don't even have to put the labels on it. Talking to people in this day and age is difficult. You face rejections, you have the fear of getting it wrong, you don't know what you don't know. So if you're in in-person networking, the first thing to think about is, who are you talking to and where are they? Once you figure that out, what are your energy levels? So a good example being, I'm far more attentive first thing in the morning. So I've stopped doing any kind of networking event after 7 p.m. as an example. It's just not for me. I don't have the most energy. It's not where I need to be. I love a breakfast event. Not only do you get free breakfast, and normally it's yum, and like chia seed bowls and acai bowls and croissants and all the like fancy stuff. Love that for all of us. But it also means that people are there in a time constraint because I have to go back to work. And so you can be really intentional about who you speak to, what you're there for. You can connect with them and follow up. Kerry asked about, is it important to put yourself out there for networking on LinkedIn? Depends on what you want. Right now, everyone on LinkedIn is just trying to be an influencer. So in that respect, no, right? If you're going to add to the selfie nation, maybe that's great, but that might not be your platform. The reason I bring that up is think about where your audience is. So forget LinkedIn generally, right? I will go back to the 5 hashtags in just a second, Graham. So think about where your audience is. So I'm going to break it down in a very stereotypical way, right? YouTube, people who are listening to videos, travel content, general speaking into the screen, right? LinkedIn, professionals, business, employers. Instagram, slightly more creative, aesthetic. You're going there not for like deep concentration. TikTok, you're not going there for concentration most of the time anyway, right? That's like fun, entertainment, comedy. Now that you've generalized all 4 of those platforms, then you think about what else is out there. So if it takes you to process verbal communication longer, that's fine. Substack is a great newsletter. It's blog format. People are going back to X and going to Threads because you can read written communication. People are creating more blogs and websites. You think about your audience and then you think about your why. Only go on a platform, let's say LinkedIn, if it suits your vision, your audience, and your story. Otherwise, it's a great platform to be on as a perspective of, this is your online CV, so you should be on there, but it doesn't mean that you need to be hyperactive or engaged. What it does mean is, if you're thinking about the world and you want to learn about sustainability, every week, maybe twice a week, in your calendar, you schedule 15 minutes where you are going on LinkedIn to 1, see the updates in companies, 2, follow the hashtag of sustainability, and 3, absorb knowledge. That's as much as you're using it for. And then once every quarter, you're updating as if it's your online CV, just to stay relevant and stay credible, and a way to increase your confidence. Should you want more, then think about where that more is happening and where your audience is. So the principles in the 5, in this Venn diagram, the principles and the 5 hashtags are very similar. They're your 5 yeses. So if something does not fit within that 5, you have to say not right now. So mine is technology, inclusion, careers, entrepreneurship, motivation, as an example. So if somebody comes to me and goes, do you want to host Glastonbury? I probably will have to say no. As much as that'd be awesome, it doesn't fit into my story or my vision or my narrative. So for that moment of fame, and there'll be a lot of fame, I might be discrediting all my experience unless I want to go into music, right? So even when Brian reached out for this webinar, I'm not here as a subject matter expert saying how can you be more sustainable or what wildlife looks like or conservation. I'm actually here to learn about that, which is exciting. I'm here as somebody who can give you a general insight into softer skills and professional skills and navigating networking, especially as someone who is neurodivergent. So it's very different. But should it have been, Sonya, we want you to give a kind of a workshop on how to, make the sea more sustainable, I wouldn't know. And that's okay. It's okay to not know things and to say, Brian, thank you so much for the opportunity. I don't think I'm the right person for this, but I do have someone in my network who'd be great. And a lot of the time, that is how networking starts. And Kerry, to your point about is LinkedIn worth the effort? That's why it's worth the effort, because you're creating those connections with people. And so you're saying, I might not be the person right now, but I might have someone in my network who is applicable. Brian says, when reaching out to people, how often is successful versus being ignored or ghosted? Many students and early career people are nervous about the idea of reaching out because they seem more experienced, senior to them. Absolutely. And you know what? I speak about this quite often. So we've gone into networking fears, right? Networking fears. This is literally on a TikTok. I talk about it as I walk around. I'm very honest and open. Networking fears are not just being ghosted, but being rejected. Let me give you a really interesting story. And I've spoken about it somewhere. Pre-pandemic, I had a meeting in the London Mayor's office. Not with the London Mayor. He hasn't replied to my DM yet, but with somebody in his wider office. So whilst I was waiting for this contact to come through, I had about 15 minutes. And I just love to warm up my vocal cords, So I'm like, right, 3, 2, 1, who am I going to talk to? There was a lady at the canteen that I was having a really good conversation with. And I think good meaning 10 minutes, we spoke, we got into it, we're talking about education and school and helping the young professionals. And towards the end, I said, oh my God, we've had such a great conversation. I'd love to stay connected. And she looked at me and she goes, I don't think there's of any value staying connected. I don't know how I can help you and you can help me, so I'd rather not. And walked off. And that was the first time that someone had actually rejected me in that capacity in person, because all it took was a LinkedIn swipe, I wasn't asking for your phone number. I was asking for your LinkedIn or your email. It was very third party. So you are going to be in a position where you're going to be ghosted. You are going to be in a position where you're going to fail. You are going to be in a position where people are going to reject you. That's a part of the game. That can't stop you from giving it a go. That can only help you to do things better. So as an example, I took that on the chin. I learned that not everybody needs to connect with you in the same way that I don't need to connect with everyone. So boundaries are really important. I also learned that generationally things are different. So the new generation of talent, I'm going to say 0 to 5 years of work experience, we want to connect with everyone. But if you've been in the workspace maybe 15 years or above, and you have traditional networks, you're very mindful of the people you let into your circle, because you're thinking, hey, I don't really know what you want from me and I don't know what I need from you. So why are we connecting? And so it's a generational shift, which is not an issue. Yes, you are going to be ghosted. Yes, you might fail, but that's completely fine. And I would say also give people the benefit of the doubt, in the sense of, I have ADHD. So sometimes it's not that I'm ghosting you. It's that I look at the email, think I've replied as if I'm like Iron Man or something, and realize I haven't, right? So one way of negating that issue is, Brian's a great example. I messaged saying, I don't know what I said exactly, but I said, if it's urgent, just WhatsApp me, because actually it's my fault for not replying back. But that's not a you problem. It's something that I can navigate differently. If, as an example, Graham, you said, it takes me longer to process verbal communication, let people know that at the beginning, and don't be afraid of it. Like I said, I get passionate, you might make up words, or put it in your email signature to be like, these are my working hours. This is how I like to work. If you need me, here I am on this platform. But at the same time, remember I said at the beginning, someone is always watching. So last year we had an intern called Daniel. Well, his name is Daniel, so his name is Daniel. And this is 2025, right? So I met him at the end of 2023. I was doing a workshop for Cardiff University and he came as a participant. We stayed in touch. So we stayed in touch via Instagram because that was his medium of choice. And as a student, he would message me every month. Hi, Sonya, let's go for coffee. I need career advice, etc. And I had a really busy 2024 where I was just traveling. But I responded here and there and said, Daniel, it's not you, it's me. I'm just busy. I can't meet, right? Or sometimes I just ghost, let's say ghosting. But when I had an opportunity in October 2024 where I needed an intern for a 2-day conference, I messaged Daniel and I said, Daniel, you've wanted work experience, you wanted career advice. I've got 2 days, it's paid. I'm not even going to interview you. I'm just going to ask you to come along. Because he kept in touch, because he showed interest, because there was intent. So at the same time, resilience is really important. If you want something, if you want to get in front of someone, if you want to be there, don't be afraid to follow up. Follow up until someone replies back and says, I'm no longer interested. And that's completely fine. But people are so busy and we are processing apparently like 27,000 pieces of information a day, which sounds like a hyper number. But, you know, at the same time, we've all become multifaceted in our brain to be like, we've got 5 tabs and screens going on. So we're never fully present. So someone ghosting you or failing to reply is generally not a you problem. But at the same time, sometimes it can be a you problem when you haven't been really clear in your ask. So obviously I have a book and there's templates there. But the point being is, if someone replied to me and said, Sonya, really loved this session. Let's connect and grab a coffee. Okay. And then, so I might not even reply back to that message. A better message would be, Sonya, I found this really useful. I am looking for work experience. I'd love to learn more about your network that you run and the careers platform. Do you have time for a 50-minute call on Thursday at 3 p.m.? I want to ask you this one question. It's very specific. It's very precise. I know exactly how long you want. I know what you're getting out of it. I know what I need to bring to that conversation. So when people are senior, they're also time poor. And when you become a manager, I'm going to be really honest with you, management is basically just managing people. And when you're managing people, you are just managing people's problems, right? More than you are managing work. So you need to be as clear as possible. Who are you talking to? Why do you want to talk to them? What does good look like? When do you need it by? What is the deadline? And keep it short and sweet. Don't send that like I used to send essays of emails. When I first started wanting to write last year, and I pitched to commissioning editors, I used to write essays on essays. No wonder I was ghosted. No wonder no one wanted to pick it up, because it was like reading a mini story, and that's not what it is. You now have tools like ChatGPT. Use it to your advantage. This is the email that I want to send someone. Can you tell me if this is the relevant information, what the summary is, if there are other examples that exist on the internet that I can then use? Google have that really good prompt. I don't know if you have Google Gemini. I actually used it yesterday and it was really good. So Google have this prompt where you can write the email and then you press Alt-H and it says, polish this for me. And it actually changes the structure of the email to make it more accessible. And accessibility is really what we're focusing on. In here, hopefully you have your phones, you can scan the QR code, 13 icebreaker questions. So if you don't know what to ask someone, I have it all laid out for you. And so I've already touched on this a little bit, but when you're networking and you're neurodivergent, you're handling your brain, having an agenda, being clear with the ask, having a time frame or a deadline, knowing exactly what the ask is, but also managing your own energy levels is really important. If you can be confident in your energy levels and your identity, and then you can share that way of working with somebody else, it will make it far easier for them to work with you rather than against you. That could be small things like, I am dyslexic, and so the best font for me to read is Times New Roman, which actually is true. I am not, but generally people who are dyslexic, that is the truth. I am time poor, and so I need webinars in 15 minutes or less. I'm autistic, and it takes me longer to process verbal communication. Interesting. So there are captions, which you can now read, which I've just turned on. So I'm sorry, I don't know why they weren't there before. You will get a transcript, hopefully. There'll be a recording. But also, should I now know that, I can try and speak slower and adapt and adjust. Yeah, of course. Are there any questions before we move on?
So can I ask a question, Sonia?
Of course you can.
Can you hear me? So just thinking, because obviously the nature sector, I guess, it's not necessarily different or, to other sectors in the sense that, not many people care about the job that they do, but a lot in the sector are drawn together because of their shared love for wildlife and the desire to protect nature. Does that help in terms of when you're aiming to connect with people at in-person conferences? Is there shortcuts to be made there across an emotional connection?
Yeah, I think that's such a relevant thing. So let's take a step back. If you already have a desired goal or something that brings you together in terms of value, that is perfect for, let's use your team members to start with, right? Let's say every Friday you're sending them an article and you're saying, we have a shared goal of conserving wildlife. Here is something I've read in the news that I think would be applicable and interesting to everyone, and just share it. That's all you have to do. Is let's start with that. The second thing might be that when you go to a conference, you go with certain questions, and certain questions are not, what do you do for a job? Certain questions might be something more like interesting. Well, how did you get into the sustainability sector? When did it start actually impacting your brain? What is the last book that you read that inspired you? What's a podcast that you've listened to that you'd recommend? As somebody who, I'm going to be really honest with you, wasn't really into wildlife or sustainability a few years ago, I am a lot more recently. And there's two reasons for that. One is because in 2022, I went on a safari. And that changed my life because I was like, wow, this is what animals are like in the wild. What are we doing to them in the cage? Right? So it did. And then last year I learned to swim and I went to the Maldives and I snorkeled. And I hadn't known that the corals under the sea are not meant to be white. Why would I know that? I learned that there's bleaching because of what we are doing as humans. And that blew my mind. And I was like, right, I need to do more now to protect sea life in the Maldives. I have nothing to do with me, as in terms of distance, but because what are the small steps that I can take? So I think another part in terms of people that are in your system or even without, not in your system, is make it relatable to their day to day. People are interested in nature. People are interested in doing better, but sometimes they don't connect the dots. Like if we've been told to recycle, tell somebody what the benefits are. If you've recently read a really good book, tell somebody that they should read it, but then be like, hey, I'm going to recommend this book to you. And then let's have a coffee to discuss what you've learned from it. If you're going to a conference, go with resources already on your phone. And so when you're connecting with someone, instead of saying, let's have a LinkedIn connection, something I've started doing now is I will email them straight away. Or I will be in my phone and I'll take notes to be like, oh, I met Brian. Brian was really interested in penguins, right? And so if I want to reconnect with Brian in 3 weeks, I'll be like, Brian, great to meet you at that conference. I saw this really interesting documentary on penguins. I remember you talking about it. This might be of interest to you. And so if you already have a shared goal, it's much easier. But at the same time, let's talk bigger, right? Follow the relevant hashtags on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Instagram. And what I mean by hashtags is because people are already posting that content, it helps you keep up with trends and what else is happening. When you go to events, ask people questions like, what are you hoping to get out of this session today? What is one question that you would like somebody to ask you? And that's completely fine. Spare says, I really struggle to know what other people might get out of connecting with me or what they can do for me. So I only reach out when I have a concrete reason, which is rare. Now I'm switching career. I need to work by this. Any tips? Absolutely. I mean, I think the starting point is that, one, when you're switching career, what does that look like in the future? Two, is just take a step back and think about the milestones that you can meet yourself and where you need help. And three, to go through your current network and tell them exactly where you are lacking. A lot of the time we are afraid of saying this is where we need help. And that's actually kind of more of an us problem. So I give you a really good example. I am launching this travel and tech magazine next month, and our first issue is on transformation. And again, as a consequence of the Maldives, I really want to do more around sustainability. But the best way I can do it is to have other people share those stories and I learn from them. But I've never edited a magazine before. And so I got in touch with a couple of editors and I said, look, I don't know what I'm doing. Is it okay if you come and co-create or co-edit with me and I can learn from you? So you've made it really clear that you don't know, that they do know, and what you need from them. And you've given them an objective. If you are switching career, your question could be, Sonya, I've seen that you work in the media space. I'm thinking of entering the media space. You have 15 minutes to tell me the pros, the cons, the trends, any kind of help that you can provide with me with in terms of what I should be focusing on. And that's completely fine. If you can be really concrete in your ask, then that's just as well. And it's interesting, right? Because you said you don't know what people can get from you. But actually, what people can get from you is your natural knowledge and your natural skill set. And the one thing I would say in all of this discussion is the things that make you quirky or annoying or objectively are like the things that people really spotlight about you are the ones that will change your life. And that's the one that you need to focus on. And that's how you can help people. And that's what we need to be in a position, right? Is I know as somebody who is a chatterbox that actually I can help you become more confident in speaking, but I might then need help in listening. So know what your natural talent and skill set is, and then you can help people. And this is where this diagram really comes into play. I'm just going to go back into it. Who are you? What is happening in the world? What are skills? What does good look like? And then what are your hashtags? So the thing is, you know what other people might get from connecting with you. But at that point, it's less about that. Because you are now switching career, you want to use them to gain advice. And if that's the case, then be really honest. Say, I'd love to take 15 minutes of your time to understand what this career looks like on a day-to-day, so I'm well prepared. I don't know what I can offer you right now, but should I be able to offer you something, I would love to return the favor. And that's okay. Any other questions? Any other thoughts? I hope that I've covered what you were expecting from this session. But I just want to make sure, because remember, adding value is really important.
Yes, you have. So yeah, there's a load of I really love your 13 icebreaker questions as well. And I do follow your newsletter and your accounts. And there's so many handy little tips there. And I love the idea of asking about like the last book you've read too, because it doesn't always have to be a straight down the nose professional question, because we're all human beings, aren't we? And it's about connecting with people on a human level, I think, too, which
Yeah.
you illustrated really well.
You speak about nature and wildlife and sustainability, and I think it's a really interesting topic. And you know, it can be as simple as like, what made you fall in love with this space? What made you realize that you should be doing something? And I think that's my point is I'm very hands up saying I had no clue about any of this until I went on a safari. And then I went to the Maldives and I saw corals and I was like, wait, there's so much more than just being in London. So asking someone that moment of like what sparked their interest is really key, because you're taking them back and you're getting to know a little bit more about their psyche, rather than what job do you do, what does your day-to-day look like. That's not as kind of interesting, right? But that kind of other thing about documentaries and podcasts and Netflix shows are also really interesting. And a lot of the time, because I do a lot of like inclusion work, a lot of workshops, because I read quite a lot, I'm always able to recommend something, which someone said about how can I share and being knowledgeable. That's a knowledgeable aspect to being able to recommend. Being recommending is a really big deal that I think people don't realize, right? You don't always get it right, but you have an idea of this is something that might be of interest. So, you know, on a different note, if you want a show that represents diversity and inclusion really well, but it's quite funny, Superstore on Netflix is really powerful. And most people have never seen it. But if you just want quick comedy, but you want something that's like quite performative in real life, really interesting. If you're in a position where you want you know, a great book that talks about actually navigating ADHD, interesting. Paris Hilton's new biography is quite interesting because she has ADHD and she also went through a really traumatic childhood despite her wealth. So if you take the wealth out of it, you learn how people navigate. Mud, Sweat and Tears by Bear Grylls is really interesting in terms of wildlife and sustainability and being in the SAS and being resilient and overcoming failure. So when you start asking these questions and you start asking for resources, it's often not about what you see in front of you. It's often the wider concept of, oh, I didn't even know that could relate to that. And then you start to get to know people as whole, because people buy into people. And if, look, AI and technology is going to take over or disrupt the world, we're going to need people even more. And according to LinkedIn in 2025, the number one skill you need right now is building relationships, relationship building, networking, business networking. That is actually number one, because ChatGPT can do everything else. And so let's go back to basics and get to know people for like who they are. And I think that would be super powerful in terms of building your network and your confidence in your community and kind of switching careers where possible.
Amazing.
I agree,
Thank you.
Sonia. Honestly, that resonates so deeply. I think, you know, we are communal creatures. We need that connection. We need to understand that we are part of a bigger system. So those unique things that make you you fit inside of a bigger system. And so you shouldn't ever be afraid to hide those things. And I think that's some wonderful advice you gave. The advice on intention as well, it reminded me of a quote that says, when your intention is clear, so is the way forwards. And I just think that's so wonderful to just have that time and space to go back and realize you don't have to be everything to everyone. And I think that's what we're trying to do all of the time, and trying to be the system. But when you find where you fit within the system, that's when you really start to shine. And that has come across so powerfully in your presentation, Sonia. So thank you so much for bringing that. And it's definitely advice I will be taking back out into the wider world. So thank you.
Fab. Are there any final questions that anybody wants to ask before we might have to jump off? But also at the same time, I would just say, sorry, I don't believe that everyone processes in the hour. So please, should you have any questions, you can message Brian or Leah and I'll be happy to answer them, or you can slide into my DMs and I do respond, but kind of eventually, but I definitely do. But at no point are we suggesting that you have to process it right now. My doors are open. I just want to give everyone the opportunity to really kind of, you know, absorb and take it away.
It's amazing, Sonia. Thank you. You got some really good quotes in the chat box there as well from thanks from people. So thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us. It's been really great. And just like you said, you know, the book on Paris Hilton may seem a bit random, but it's a random connection. And I think often the best connections I've made are completely random ones. You typically, Sonia, would not be part of my nature network, but yeah, I met you at a conference, didn't expect to come away with somebody who I'd connect with years later down the line for something that's really key to our industry, but did. And I think that's a really powerful point, is that, you know, your network is made up of, it's a bit like a sports team that you pull people off the bench for
Absolutely.
different situations.
Yeah. And I think just on that reference, right? I would say to everyone, and you don't have to do this overnight, but maybe even a yearly basis, like I'm really comfortable every year being a new version of me. It's very similar to, I'm setting the foundations, like, you know, the building blocks before I build my house. Kind of think of it like Lego, and it's building on the relevant skills. But last year I was a YouTuber. This year I'm, you know, going to be an editor. Like, it's all around representation and inclusion. It's just a different medium of showing up. My point being is, think about what you really do want to be known for and start working towards that. And that's not going to come overnight. That's going to come in months, in weeks. When we started, let's say, business networking, I started producing content around it randomly last September. And it's only now that I'm seeing a lot of fruits of the labor. I'm seeing people get involved. I'm seeing contacts. I'm meeting people in real life who say, and these are people who don't like, who don't subscribe, who don't share. I've had a lady come up to me and goes, just a couple of weeks ago, she goes, I was just able to negotiate a new work, promotion, and network into a business I really wanted to based off your newsletter. And my response to her was, did you like that newsletter? And she said, no. And I said, well, that's obviously the key, right? Is the people that are consuming aren't always like actively doing something about it. So that should not be your forte. It's about getting things out there and letting people know that should you want this information, you're available. And so it is going to take 6 months. It is going to take 9 months. It's going to take about 12 months, if anything. But if you start today, I guarantee you can help your life change in 12 months. But that's actively going to impact your sustainability efforts as well, right? Because that is the work that you are doing. And that is the program that you're a part of. And don't we want more people to be to care about nature? Like, that's such an obvious thing.
We do, and bring more people to the table as well. And
yeah,
right.
Exactly.
If you produce something great, it only has to be seen by somebody who wants to make a big difference, right? And
100%.
that doesn't have to be immediately.
I mean, even for myself, look, now I'm a part of this. Like, I would want to learn more. I want to come to workshops, but as a key networker, I would not come with anything to say. I would actively come, and I do this when you're in networking situations. One thing I forgot to mention is, if you're networking and it's an open circle and you're there in person and you go and step in and someone goes, oh, great to meet you. Most of the time, my response now is, my name is Sonya. I'm going to let you finish. I'm just here to listen and learn. And I do say that, and I do listen and learn, because a lot of the time when you're in spaces that are uncomfortable, you don't have anything to say, and that's fine. And that is how I introduce myself. Please carry on the conversation. I'm just here to listen. And that listening is intentional, and then you can follow up afterwards. But even for me, look, as somebody who's getting into the more sustainable space, I'm not saying I'm going to be a sustainability officer, but I am saying that actually it's changing the way that I consume and my habits. And I am, as you know, objectively, as somebody who's purchasing or just being a person, how do I show up better? And that, I think, is a really important change.
Very powerful. So for those on the call, obviously Sonia's given some really solid advice in there, and we will be releasing a recording after this as well. So if you need to think about it for as long as you want to, and then go back over it and follow back that advice, feel free. For people like Kerry and Anshel, I mean, Sonia's shown that she's willing and interested to learn about the sector, so invite her for a guided tour around your nature reserve that you work on. I reckon she would love that.
Oh my gosh, where that 100%, wherever that is, do that. Oh my God, I can't wait.
There you go. Got you another safari in the UK. No lions.
Apparently there's a safari in the UK in Sussex.
Nep. Yes. Yeah.
So interestingly, just on another note, because obviously I'm doing this travel mag, someone pitched how more people are going to the safari in Sussex than they are outside of abroad. But again, that's something that I would have never come across. So that's so interesting that we have something of that kind in the UK, or even like nature parks or wildlife reserves. Like, it changes the way that you show up. So yeah, anyways, you know, the link is just interesting, I think, there.
Okay, well, Kerry's in Devon. If anybody's got a link to NEP, then get Sonya down there. We can certainly hook you up as well.
Oh my God, Devon, we'd love to come. My mother loves Cornwall. We went for the first time 2 years ago and she fell in love with it.
It's beautiful. Yeah, it is.
Anyways.
Amazing. So thank you so much, Sonya, and thank you to everyone for joining us as well. I've really enjoyed it. And we will be releasing this afterwards. Stay in touch. We're going to stay connected with Sonya as well, and hopefully get her involved again in the future in another interesting webinar.
Yeah, thank you so much. Stay connected and have a great rest of your day.
Amazing. Thanks, Sonya. Thanks all.
Bye.